Thank you, Michael. And hi, everybody. We've been talking a lot today about news storytelling, so we thought it would be interesting to end today with a roundtable with the creative community, people that are involved in AR, virtual production, design. So we're going to be showing you some AR today and some virtual sets that are relatively new. And a little bit of virtual production. So I'm excited to introduce you to our speakers. I'm going to promote them right now so that they show up. Hope I can make this work. There we go. Yes, I'm making it work. Good. Let's see. All right, here we are. Let me introduce our panel, our VIP guests for this roundtable. I think I have everybody here. I do. We're going to start with Jim Fenhagen, who is Executive Vice President of Design at Jack Morton Worldwide. Jim has won 22 Emmy Awards and 26 BDA Awards during a career in which he has designed sets for every major network and cable group. Memorable work includes The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, The Daily Show, and sets for ESPN's High Definition Design Center. More recently, he's designed CBS News' 2020 Election Headquarters in Times Square, which we're going to be showing you some pictures of. Larry Hartman is Vice President and Senior Design Director at Jack Morton Worldwide. Larry is an Emmy-winning designer who has worked in the broadcasting industry for more than 20 years. Larry's clients have included the NFL Network, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, NBC Sports, CNN, and CBS News. Tom Armbruster, our technologist for today, is president and CEO of 209 Group and is an expert in the field of entertainment technology. Tom has leveraged years of technical sales experience and long-standing relationships to grow and streamline businesses, drawing on knowledge from the film, video games, life sciences, and medical, automotive, defense, and aerospace industries. His career has included a particular emphasis on vision science and the human-machine interface. So get your questions ready for Tom. Kathy Skinski, last but not least, is General Manager for Broadcast Media and Virtual Solutions at Planar, a leading provider of premier displays and visualization products, and the market share leader in LED displays since 2017. Kathy has worked for more than 20 years in television and digital media and has spent time at ABC, Time Warner, and CNN. She has worked behind the scenes for many globally televised broadcasts, including Super Bowls, World Cup soccer, presidential elections, and inaugurations. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Kathy, I thought, and I want to make this a conversation, so please don't hesitate to ask one another questions, comment on what one another say. Same for the audience. If you have questions, hit the Q&A feature or do a little raise hand and we'll let you ask out loud. Kathy, let's start by having you explain how your companies, Jack Morton Worldwide, 209 Group, and Planar collaborate on projects. Oh, you're muted.
There's a reason I've been behind the scenes for all these years. So thank you, Kathy. And hello, everybody from the nation's capital, where we're enjoying our first snow of the season. So I'm thrilled to be here. And yes, I mean, in a nutshell, we're like spokes on the wheel, right? You kind of need all the people in place to make it happen. And Jim and Larry and Tom, their teams, they're just great people and they're great partners. And we collaborate well, we communicate well, and each of us are our own market leaders in our industry. So if you kind of bundle that all together, it makes for some really great brainstorming, thinking, and at the end of the day, some great projects. So as you mentioned, Kathy, a lot of us have deep roots in the broadcast community, so we understand the environment. So as companies start to kind of explore where to go with AR or virtual production environments, they come back to us for our expertise so that they can take that storytelling really to the next level. And so the next step is like, what is the vision and how can design and technology work to make that vision happen? So, and I think they really go hand in hand. So I think all our companies really like to think out of the box. We like to be very creative. We like to do custom things. We like to push the brand for the companies, and taking it from concept to reality is something I think we all intuitively take a lot of pride in. And I think one commonality with our companies is that we continually to push the needle. So whether it's Planar from a technology perspective or a visionary design, or taking all the elements that go into this virtual production environment, which is very complex, I think we all, lean on each other and enjoy seeing and learning about the art of possible. And I think as we talk a little bit more today about AR and that environment, we have firsthand business cases that say that companies that have deployed these kind of technologies, whether AR or virtual production, the metrics all go north, right? So from audience and engagement and growth. So it's also a very proven market, as well as being a really exciting one at this time.
We've heard that from the AR providers, that it can keep the audience tuned in longer, which I'm sure, and younger audiences, which everyone wants. So Jim and Larry, I'm just wondering how you've reacted to this year when all the production, especially in news, went remote. And so we've had a lot of anchors and reporters reporting from home with bookcases behind them, potted plants. Has that been inspiring, or have you just said, I can't wait to get back to studios?
Well, yeah, well, Kathy, it's I guess a two-part answer. At first, it was interesting to see where people were coming from. Like you get to look into people's environments, which I find interesting, and you start reading the things that are on the bookcase, as a clue to who these people are. But I think as we got used to that, it's starting to get like a little bit, all the same in a way. And so, we've had clients reach out to us at Jack Morton and say, well, can you help us with this? Can you? And so we actually put together some kind of like sets in a box kind of thing, where we could mail something to a client and you customize a background for people that don't really have the tools to do it themselves.
Yeah, sorry, I'll put a couple of these up here.
I'm just giving away our whole presentation. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
So, we just came up with, these are some ideas that we were showing people that, from printed backgrounds to using large scale television sets where you could put anything into it, to green screen, with lighting kits. These are ways that hopefully you can, at some point you can mail some of the stuff and then people could do it themselves, but you'd be surprised how, sometimes people can't do that even. So that sending a crew into someone's house is difficult. I mean, we finally ended up for Stephen Colbert's For the Late Show. We don't have a picture of this, but he came back to the Ed Sullivan Theater, but didn't want to go into the big set. So we recreated his office in a small insert studio so that he could have, feel like he was in his office, but it's actually a set. Anyway, that's
Interesting.
Yeah.
Add to that.
Helps. Yeah, that was helpful, because then we were able to bring a little bit of that production value back. We had windows, but they were really monitors, so they could put content in there and make it able to change. The lighting was much more professional. We had real cameras. So it was kind of a hybrid of the being at home in a studio and getting the production value from actually being in a real studio. So
yeah, you talk about trying to do storytelling, and it's just not, how do you do it from your dining room,
mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask Tom, there has been an increase in AR and VR in the last few years. Why is that?
Well, I think, so the virtual production stuff has been attempted for a very long time. In fact, it's funny, before the real explosion in the last kind of year, we were pitching it to a studio and they said, look, man, you've been telling me this stuff works for 10 years. I don't believe you, right? But it's changing now for a couple of reasons. One is certainly the uptick in performance from game engines. There's just no doubt that content creation has gotten much easier and much more available. I mean, they're free, right? Unreal Engine is free. So the availability for people to have access to that kind of power to create and render content is certainly one. And compute power is, Moore's law certainly always plays a role. And, the proliferation of low cost, high resolution headsets, which are allowing people to actually, consume this content at home in ways never thought of before. I think all those add up to the kind of the explosion that we're seeing now. And I don't think that's going to slow down for some time.
I'm a total dummy on the headsets and what people watch. What is it? Are they watching movies? Are they gaming? What are they doing? They're not watching the news on there. So what?
Well, yeah, you know what? You can. It's pretty incredible. It's everything now. My son and I were, in fact, I'm a big sailor, and he downloaded a VR sailboat race for me the other day, and I was sailing in my garage for a few hours. So it's literally everything. A lot of the good stuff is full 360. There's some stuff that is, not 360. It's a bit limiting, but yeah, I think people they're attending. Well, before the lockdown, they were attending NBA games and being able to choose their seat from anywhere in the arena and watch live. So it's getting to be almost everything. I mean, they call it the metaverse at this point. It's all things.
Interesting. So do you think that, Jim and Larry, is that creatively inspiring people who work in the media to make scenes that look more like what Tom is talking about?
Well,
Definitely. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Let me take this. Well, I think yes. I think with what we're finding now with the advent of large scale LED screens becoming more affordable, and working with Kathy's group, you almost can make the walls of a set just be anything. Like they can be video screens that like four walls, floor and ceiling, and you can put whatever content you want in there. And that we're coming to a point where that could be, where we're going. And as price points become available, and then once you have that set up, then if you overlay the gaming engine technology, you can create environments that move in real time, and it's amazing. And so we're finding ourselves moving in that direction, both that way, and we'll get into some more of that, but not just green screen anymore. It's like making entire video cubes that you can put anything in.
Okay. Kathy,
It's
thoughts on that?
just to tag onto what Jim said, I think, just and what Tom said, the evolution of the technology, like the GPUs, the rendering, everything's so much faster. To give you some example, for the Unreal Engine, which is a free download, but a lot of people are playing with the Unreal Engine in the space, there's been over 8 million downloads of that, right? So you can just see how attractive people are to this marketplace.
Yeah, I'm kind of a newbie to Unreal Engine, but we're hearing it from the vendors that are serving news, and it's just helping with the AR thing, and so just back to the bookcases and the potted plants. Is that creatively inspiring, or is any of that here to stay, or is that just going to leave when everybody goes back to the studio? Do you think, designers?
Oh, I like some of that. I'm a big PBS NewsHour, and when
Me too.
and so why am I spacing out on her name all of a sudden?
Judy?
Judy Woodward. She has the best bookcase. Like I just love her bookcase because it's just really organized and it has color and warmth, and she adds things to it and everything. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a real home is, well, always there's a warmth to it and a personality. I mean, for storytelling, that, you know, in some ways that adds a lot, you know, to who you are if you can make it work. You know, some people, I mean, we actually suggested to a client that we do a phone, you know, like a Zoom session prior to whatever they were doing, where we walk them through, like move that over to the, you know, like help design their background in real time. And there could be, you know, you could do a virtual, like almost like doctor on demand, like designer on demand kind of thing, where you know, work your way around someone's room. I think there's both. I think there's, you know, there's a time when you want to have that personality, and other times maybe where you want more of a branded background, so that you focus more on what the person's saying, perhaps, or there's a messaging behind over your shoulder. I mean, like good news graphics. I have to stop loud. You know, you see a face and you see an over your shoulder graphic. I mean, it's you're getting a story told, and you're getting something to also illustrate it. And I think that's, you know, there's something to be said for that too.
Yeah.
I wonder if some audiences and viewers are going to almost be accustomed to that. I think they're getting a chance to peek behind the curtain, and it does feel very authentic. I mean, it will drive me crazy, but I'll see someone will have like a can of WD-40, like it's kind of like no one's really looking sometimes. It seems like they need a little bit of art direction, like still have the reality of what's there, but just be mindful about exactly what you have in the frame. So I think it could be just maybe cleaned up a little bit, and then I think it is something that, you know, to some level could always be incorporated.
Yeah, it's like nobody's asking you yet, though, for that. They're not calling you up and saying, I want a new set, but I want it much more warm. I want it to look like a living room. It doesn't sound like yet. And Kathy, we were talking about monitors. I know we're going to see some new things pretty soon.
Yep.
But with the monitors, every time I look at people's sets, or the monitors are just getting bigger. And when we went to CNN Hudson Yards last year, the monitors are the walls of the studios. I don't even know if they're the floors too. You could tell me that. How ubiquitous is that becoming, like in the news world? Walls that are.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point of the session this week about storytelling, it makes it so dynamic, right? So years ago, you had the Duratrans, right? You had to pull them down, pull the screen, and this way it's dynamic. You can change, you know, CNN goes from show to show to show. They can be in the same studio. They're a completely different look and feel. And yes, we have floors in many of the CNN, in many of our studios. And thank you, Larry, for bringing it up. This one is.
Well, I'll just give a little context while you're talking,
Sure.
Kathy. So these are printed backdrops, just as you were kind of mentioning. This is a project we did for NBC Sports in Boston, where those vistas out the window, that's a print. This is a nighttime version, and they're basically on rollers with a light box illuminating them. But then, as you're talking, Kathy, I mean, here's Studio 19Y from Hudson Yards.
Yeah, so what he showed before is more old school. And now this is an example of that, where it's printed backdrop. Then going back to the CNN New Day. So those are now replaced with all screens. Those are all monitors in those
Right.
walls.
But there are some hard elements there for us dummies, you know, like the desk and the chairs and the steps, right? Is that
Right.
Correct. I mean, I think as designers and coming from architectural backgrounds, like I think adding that dimensional pieces to these walls gives it more interest and you're creating layers of interest. So it's not just all screens. There's like stuff that connects them, and so you have some relief from the screens.
It also, I think it helps ground things too. We're always talking about bringing in AR elements and VR elements, but a lot of times it's having something physical to interact with it. So the line is kind of blurred, and you can't tell exactly where does the digital end and the physical begin. So anything we can do there that kind of blurs that line, I think is helpful as well. This particular.
So we do have a lot. Floors are a big trend, and because they're versatile as well. They can use them as demo areas or branding or sponsorship. And we just launched this year a floor that has a really small pitch. It's what we call a 2.6 pitch. And that takes it to another level in itself, because it gives us the opportunity to really show video in the floors. So I think, you know, the keys for all of us is, you know, make sure that it's flexible. There's a lot of hybrid solutions out there, and it's fun to play in all those environments.
What is the pitch of the floor, Kathy, for us dummies? What is that? Is it actually tilted a little bit? Or are you talking pixels? What's going on with the pitch?
Yeah, pixel pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So what you see here, around that center platform, that is video on the floor, and that is, I think, is that a 5mm more or less, Kathy?
It's 5.2. Mm-hmm.
And then this is that same set shot on the other side, but we basically changed the video content. So now it's a nighttime graphic. The floor graphic is different. The lighting's different. And, you know, this is kind of a little bit of a side conversation, but, you know, a lot of times what we do conceptually is we'll envision the entire space with these displays, and we'll suggest what kind of content goes in there. But this is usually the client, their graphic department, that picks up the inspiration we started with and then takes it to the next level. So in all these cases, we're kind of creating that canvas, and then they're really working on that digital canvas and creating their own concepts.
And so, I don't know if you had more to show, Larry.
Well, this is just more of an evolution of that idea of, you know, having backgrounds, whether we started out with printed backdrops that suggest a wider view. With the LED screens, we're able to bring in that content in these large spans, but then have all the depth and versatility and the ability to put motion and other kind of more interactive, you know, layers to it. What was worth just pointing out here, this is another CBS News set that we did down in Washington, D.C. that's actually really small. And behind Margaret Brennan, there's an LED screen, and that view of the Capitol building and even that floor that's in perspective and that ceiling that's going back in perspective, all of that is created in a graphic. So that LED screen is suggesting even more depth than you know, just having content right behind her. So I think it's interesting how we're getting that Z space, like almost that Z depth, just out of a flat LED screen. And then you take that with, you know, cameras that can track and using the Unreal, that kind of technology, it even pushes it further, where it really becomes hard to tell where's their screen and where's that actually physical depth behind the talent.
Yeah, it's remarkable. It really adds something. Tom.
Yeah, and it's a practical sense too, because that in that very small studio, they do evening news every night, and then on the weekends they do Face the Nation. So the whole set can turn into a different set without.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tom, not everybody does AR. It's fairly new in news. What are there barriers, or do people just don't know how to do it, or what do you see as the barriers technologically?
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy to do properly. You know, there is a lot of technology involved. You know, we just got done talking about how democratized some of the tech has become, but when it's on that scale and it's live and there's high quality graphics and there's moving cameras and there's people interacting with these sets, it becomes a really, really well orchestrated computer dance. It's just not very easy to pull off and make it believable. So it's the kind of thing where when it's done right, you almost can't tell and you're totally mesmerized. And when it's done wrong, everybody knows it's wrong right out of the gate. So, you know, on those big stages, those big budget programs, it's risky. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to make it fly and look right.
And so would a CBS have to add like a person that's in charge of just making sure the AR happens properly technologically, Tom? Is that usually what happens, or?
Yeah, it's more than a person for sure. Yeah.
They hire a full-time person usually to help with a big set like that. Yeah. Which can be used, like you said, several shows can be shot in there.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay, interesting. And you folks, in addition to what you just showed, I think you did some other, let's see, I'm just trying to think. Oh.
Yeah, I think we could show the, Larry and Jimmy want to show the AR graphics for CBS for elections?
Sure, so this is basically, let's see here. So again, kind of playing on that idea of the LED screen suggesting depth. This is a set we did very recently for CBS News in Times Square in the 1515 building, basically where TRL used to be. And that view of Times Square is all happening in an LED screen. That's kind of an art-directed version of Times Square where it's got a CBS Elections look to it. What is cool about this space was we've got this printed eye on the floor and we've got this curving desk. And all of this was, partially designed so that it could accommodate AR elements and have those AR elements look anchored in the space and look like they're being motivated, by something with purpose. So here you're seeing just a scene of, one of those overlays. And we've actually got a video that we'll show here too.
And this includes a floor, Kathy. This
one is a printed floor, so not LED.
Yes, you can see there that's printed, and then the AR element activates on top of it, and it's kind of like that eye is almost like an anchor for it. But it's kind of just a visual design just to try to make sure that those AR elements look like they're integrated, that they're not really foreign or out of place. And I think that's one of the things, Jim and I are always talking about, like our big focus is design, and we're trying to do anything we can do to help, again, we talk about storytelling. How can we help these elements that the client's team is going to bring into it feel like they're supposed to be there and they're really well integrated?
Okay. Tom, I don't know if this is a good place to ask you the difference between augmented reality and virtual production. I think of this as a virtual set.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot going on here. What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, virtual production is really more of an overarching terminology that encompasses a lot of things. Augmented reality is what you just saw, where we know the floor is a practical floor and that eye is visible to everybody that's standing on the floor, but the buildings and the vote tallies pop out of the floor. That's not visible to the people who are standing there. That's only visible when you're watching on a display. And so that's augmented reality. There's things being added to reality, and those people sitting there can't see it. Only us at home can. So virtual production includes augmented reality and virtual reality and a whole host of other things. So it's kind of the umbrella for all things.
Okay, interesting, good.
I'm going to show one more example here too.
Good.
So this is another set. This is something we did for Rogers Sportsnet up in Canada. And basically this, you'll see this is a similar where we've got our physical set in the background, and then this is an augmented element in the foreground. So the ice here is basically an augmented element, but we still have our main set in the background.
Okay, and Kathy mentioned pixel pitch. Is there a best pixel pitch for virtual production, Tom?
Lower is better generally. Broadcast actually has much more exact requirements than film does. That was something I wasn't aware of until very recently. So yeah, the lower the pitch, the better it's going to look. But the lower the pitch, the more horsepower you need to render behind it. So there's give and take. And it's like anything else. You need to decide what the goal is before you pick the pitch. Sometimes a 2.6 works perfectly fine for film because we're on a huge stage. That would not work in the broadcast examples that we're just looking at here. So it's tough to say that there's one size that fits all. You really have to have the content in mind before making that decision. But Planar offers all of it, right? They've got end-to-end solutions. So that makes them the go-to for all these solutions.
If I could add that, Kathy,
Yeah.
there's a real practical thing that happens as set designers, when we're laying out this, is the distance that the talent's going to be from the screen, because that determines somewhat how tight that pixel pitch needs to be. Otherwise, if it's too far away, you'll start to get moire, or you'll see the pixels, if you're too close to it. But now when you've got, so literally, if you have like a 2.5 screen, you can only say you have to be 12 feet away from that. But if you have a 1.9 screen, you can be 9 feet away from it. There's actually, distances that are affected by these pixel pitches. So that's part of what we do as set designers, is figure out how close and what pitch you need to use based on these distances.
And then
the great thing about that too is it just seems like every year those pixel pitches are getting smaller and tighter and the price keeps dropping. So I think that's what's exciting for us, is that before, to have an LED screen on a set was like you had to have a really high budget, investment for that to happen. And now it's almost commonplace that you'll be able to do some kind of LED on any kind of set, which is, for us as designers, it's just exciting to see we have more tools to play with.
yeah, Kathy's shaking her head. And more floors then, I presume, too.
Floor,
Yeah.
ceilings, everything.
Ceilings, columns. It's interesting because the technology has evolved so much that it's so flexible. It's just not square, rectangular screens. If you want a column, if you want a floor, you want a ceiling. I mean, it's really, a wide open canvas these days.
And the ceilings, are they used for more scenes where the talent is enveloped? Like, give an example of a ceiling, that how you would use that in storytelling, Kathy.
Yeah, a lot of people are using it just as ancillary lighting components. And I think, just to give some natural light. So I don't really see today, I'm not seeing a lot of people use it as another video source, or it's not like somebody's, on a set and they're looking up at the ceiling to interview anybody. I'm not seeing that. So I think a lot of people are using, kind of hybrid solutions, right? They might want the floor, they might want to do virtual reality one day, they might want to do augmented reality one day. So I think when they're building their studios, we're seeing a lot of people saying, and especially more home stuff and more not in the office stuff, people want to do townhomes. So, so it's a variety of options comparatively to 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'm wondering if, when you all are called in, because it sounds like you're called in together to projects, is the storytelling in the broadcaster's head and then they're asking you how to make it happen? Augmented, or do they just say, I want a studio with monitors and the ability to do augmented reality?
I'll let Jim and Larry and Tom feed on this one, but it's funny because after The Mandalorian came out, it was like, gosh, like 4 or 5 calls a day. It's just like, we want to do a set like The Mandalorian, and that's all they knew, but they really didn't know what really went into it. And that's kind of like Tom's specialty. So, but I think people have an idea. I think sometimes people need to be educated because it's not always, plug and play.
Yeah. Well, I do want to ask you some questions about the future to wrap up, but I don't know if we want to show any more video or anything like that. Shall I ask you the questions and you can use them as props, Larry, the videos,
Sure.
if necessary? All right, so Jim and then Larry, what do you see coming in 2021 in terms of design direction? What trends are we going to see?
Well, besides that kind of making LED screens, all 4 sides and top and bottom, I think that's definitely, we're moving towards that. But at the same time, Larry and I have seen, more green screen kind of environments as well, where you can, in a green environment, put an entire world in there. And because of the Unreal Engine, you can create bigger environments. And this is an example of a project we were working on that Larry's going to show you, that is kind of a direction we think we're heading in. Go ahead, Larry. Walk us through.
I mean, what you're basically seeing here is that kind of trapezoid, that's basically the physical studio with a green screen cyc and 2 positions in it. And we were just starting to think about designing this digital extension to that environment and actually thinking of it holistically. So you can see this is like, we're doing ground plans of spaces that are not going to be built except in a digital, program. So this is basically that space where we're kind of calling this a pavilion, where those 4 chairs and that table in the center would really be, and the talent would be the only thing physical. So I think, this is almost an answer to one of your earlier questions, Kathy, about like, how is this influencing design? And I think it is literally forcing us to think outside the box, think where we can create spaces that we don't have to be, bound by having to see a lighting grid, having to see light fixtures, having to worry about all of that scenery necessarily being built. that we can imagine it and make sure that it looks grounded and realistic, and that the talent will feel comfortable and look comfortable in the space. But it does kind of free us, just you know, our imaginations to kind of push things a little bit more. And then I think it's also about just storytelling too. I mean, we were kind of going through different versions of how you could relate the set to the topics that you're talking about, whether it's day or night, whether you're talking about a specific sport. So, you know, we're definitely excited by the possibilities of being able to push in this direction.
Tom, do you have thoughts about next year? What you're going to see, the most important technologies that you'll be working with next year?
Yeah, you're going to see Planar and Unreal Engine everywhere you look. That's all we talk about now. All day, every day. We're Kathy knows, and Larry and Jim know as well. We're just consulting and designing, and as soon as they're building these stages all over the world right now. There's literally dozens of them under construction right now. They keep getting larger, and they keep getting more refined in order to serve multi-purpose needs. Like we said, they'll be able to handle a wider variety of content based on the way they're designed. So it's, yeah, 2021 is all LED all the time. There's just no doubt about it.
Wow, nice segue to you, Kathy. What do you see happening next year in?
I mean, I agree. I think, you know, given the environment we're in today, I think a couple of things will happen. One, micro LED is up and coming. People know about that, but I think a little closer, a little bit of a micro view. I think home production. So I know you love the bookcases, Kathy, but I think people that might be the news directors might have an opportunity to get like a complete package, kind of plug and play, but then it gives you the variety to enhance that storytelling from home. So you're not just seeing the bookcases. And then I think as we head towards like the Super Bowl, you know, outdoor LEDs. So you can't have 20 people in your living room watching the Super Bowl. But now we have outdoor LEDs that you can actually have outside. You don't have to worry about Mother Nature. You don't have to worry about sunlight and the brightness. So you can have that outdoor experience. And the same goes for outdoor dining and restaurants. I mean, I think people are just trying to say, this is the environment we're going to be in for a while. So how do we adapt and still move forward?
Screens everywhere.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I think that's it. I think we're wrapped up. I really want to thank you folks. I think this was really an interesting conversation. Jim Fenhagen and Larry Hartman from Jack Morton Worldwide, and Tom Armbruster from 209 Group, and Kathy Skinski from Planar. Thanks a million. We'll have this video up hopefully tomorrow or the next day. So you can Vimeo, folks, and anybody who missed it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Kathy.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.